Hey y'all, I'm Chris Fox, a brand strategist and marketing coach, and this is the Small Business Survival Guide. I'm bringing the questions and concerns we have about doing business in the age of the coronavirus to experts in their field who can help us look ahead and give practical tips to press on. Today I'm joined by Mary Siems. Mary is a self-proclaimed productivity nerd who most days can be found working on projects, drinking matcha lattes, and listening to podcasts. A medical school dropout and serial entrepreneur, Mary finds joy by helping business owners create more mental space so they are able to work on the things that really matter. It's good to see you again, Mary.
So good to see you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And I know that you come bearing gifts. So I want to get right out of the gate and say you have prepared a PDF resource of your best productivity tips on the subject we're going to mention, time blocking.
Yes, I am the biggest advocate of time blocking, and I also love a good PDF freebie. Like I'm like one of those people who signs up for every resource. So guys, please grab that. It's really helpful and it's really simple.
Perfect. Well, we're going to put the link in the description to sign up for Mary's email list and grab your PDF freebie. So what are some ways, as you've been a serial entrepreneur, either you have or you've seen partners struggle or you've seen business owners struggle with productivity?
Great question. I think the biggest struggle and the thing that I hear all the time, or maybe people reach out and they're like, I have so many ideas and I have no idea how to get started and go from like, okay, I know what I want to do, but I don't understand the how. And I think the biggest hurdle there is that they just think they need to do it all at once, but they're not really thinking, okay, well, what's the one small step I could do today? Or how can I create some structure in my day that if I consistently do this every single day, the end result is going to be, okay, yeah, I am accomplishing those things. But I think they get paralyzed because there's so much that they want to do and they don't even know where to start. So sometimes it's easier to just like do the things that are at least feel like they're forward moving, but it's really not getting you closer to where you want to go. And you're not really doing it in any systematic way. And so you don't have like these metrics built in to say like, am I getting there? I think we spend a lot of time in our inbox. I know I do that personally. So it's like, how can you give things, all of these different tasks, a space within your calendar so that you can ensure that you are accomplishing the things that really, really matter? So we'll get into this a little bit more, but I use a system called time blocking. And that's also just like this visual representation where you can look back and feel, it's kind of like when you make a list and you check it off. And sometimes you also just like write something down so you can check it off. You're like, I did that like 5 minutes ago, but I'm going to go ahead and write it down. There is a sense of fulfillment that we get when we look and say like, I set out to do all of these things and I did them and there was enough time to accomplish them all. So I know that I'm moving towards my goal because I was strategic about how I put things on that calendar.
So you've brought up time blocking a couple times. Would you say that that's one of the most powerful productivity tips that you see in business?
Like, yeah, it is the most powerful tip. Like if you, I mean, everybody can look at it in a different way, but if you don't have structure and a plan and a real strategic way of going about your day and the important tasks, then like your priorities just kind of get out of whack. So I think that if you're going to implement one new thing in your business, I think let's like do a time audit. Let's look at how we're spending our time, and then let's implement time blocking. It's a game changer.
So maybe for a lot of business owners who find themselves either working from home or working, remotely, would you say that time blocking is a really good skill to try to hone right now? Is it a good time for time blocking?
I think it's a great time for time blocking, and it's even more so important to time block in the items that are like, I'm going to do school with my kids. I'm going to like, I know a lot of people are struggling with that. And also looking at maybe before you had 8 hours in your day that were like peak productivity, which doesn't exist also. That's not real. But I think now if you can say like, okay, what are the 4 hours in my day that I can find like the peak productivity, but giving space to everything that deserves space in your life. So that's things like cooking meals, going on walks, spending time with family. It's not just business activities that need to be put on your
Mm,
calendar. It's literally anything that takes your time. It could be, okay, well, I know that like every month I'm going to have to do some like car maintenance, let's say, or like those weird things that always like mess up your schedule. And you're like, wow, I had such a great idea. But it's like, if you don't have them incorporated in the like your overall routine, then you get derailed. So I think right now, when we're in a really weird time and you wake up and you're like, is it Sunday? Is it Tuesday? I
yeah.
have no idea what day it is. That if you kind of have something to anchor you, it number one is great, like psychologically, it feels like we're being productive, even if it's like, you know what, I chose to spend 2 hours today with my kids and I did that. And I think it's also really good to model that. Or if you're a
Mm.
parent working and it's like giving your kids the ability to like set their own schedule. I think that's also something that's been really come to light, is that everybody has different hours and it doesn't have to be this like 8 to 5. It could be that like, you know what, from 10 to 2, that's when everybody can do like their most important work. And that's okay as long as you're communicating that and you're doing it on purpose.
You just mentioned on purpose. That's probably the
Yeah.
theme that's running through all of this. It's going to take intention, both in your business and your life, in your relationships, to make time for how you want to spend your time. So, give us some practical tips to begin to implement time blocking.
Okay, perfect. This is like, again, with the people who like feel like they're overwhelmed, they're like, "Oh, wow, sounds great, but what does that even mean?" Like my like gift, if I could give everybody one thing, it's like you get a how. Like with me, I want to give you the how, not just like this airy fairy, like, yeah, guys, go do it. So
Yeah.
the key to really starting this whole process is, first thing you have to do is like just a brain dump of all the things that take up your time. So I'm talking like personal things, professional, um, and you're going to just like make a list of everything you do every day, every week, every month, and every year. So the year ones are kind of harder to really think about, but but like in a typical week, what are the recurring events, and then what are like the one-off things, and then you just brain dump all of those.
Mm.
So that could take a little bit of time. It could be also looking back at your calendar, if you're a Google Calendar or a paper planner, and seeing like, oh, well, what do I spend time on? I don't know. So like for me, on my like things, I have things like, when do I do client meetings? When do I do like business development, content writing? When am I like developing new systems? When am I just doing all of these things that like actually move my business forward? So first is a brain dump. And once you get that done, the next step is to, okay, you're going to take your piece of paper and you're going to look at that and see like, okay, well, what are the patterns? What are the key themes? What are the key categories of these types of events? So
Mm.
most important, I think, is looking at like, what are the personal, like you're going to have a personal category. You're going to have your like finance category, everyone's is going to look a little bit different. And that's why I don't like to give you like the set categories, because that would be like
Mm.
me telling an Enneagram 3 telling somebody else like what they want to do, would just be like, wow, that's not nice of you. So you look at your categories and then you rank your categories in priority. So I always say like, whatever your most important one should be like your you time, your family time. And then just go down from there according to your business. And then, so that's like step number 2 is you get your categories. Then step 3 is you have this lovely, in the PDF, you're going to see this, there's this grid and it looks like a calendar. It has like Sunday through Saturday, and you're going to give yourself a start time and an end time. And then you literally just go through and start putting in your blocks. Like, how many hours at a time do you need each day to do each one of those categories? And it can change week by week, but I think giving yourself a really basic structure at first is so, so helpful. And then the other important thing when you're making that is leave margin and leave white space, because there is nothing that makes you feel worse than like that overwhelming, like, wow, this is a great idea, but it's not realistic. So I think we
Mm. Yeah.
actually um, tend to overestimate the amount of things that we can get done. So I'm almost like, okay, well, like add at least 20% more time to whatever that task is. So you don't just put the events like back to back. You may like say like my first block is like from 8 to 10, and then I have like a 30-minute catch up window. And then I spend 30 minutes in my emails from like 11 to 11:30. And then I enter my like next block.
Mm.
So yeah, like, in the psychology behind it is that we lose so much time when we're switching from activity to activity. And so if we can put the same type of activities in one block, we're so much more efficient. Our brains love us because they're able to like focus on the one thing, and it's just like being hyper focused on that one thing. And once you're done and you can move on to the next thing. And it's kind of just keeps our brains engaged with each of those
And
blocks.
so that's a reason you're saying group like tasks,
Yes.
because you're already in that brain space. It's all part of that flow. So if
Yep.
you're writing content, you give yourself a period of time to do content. If you're doing admin or financial tasks, you give yourself that period, and to try to group those things together.
Absolutely. And so important is to have some self-awareness and look at like, when is your brain, like there's some days, like I know that if I wake up really early, like on a Tuesday morning, I can be really creative and really productive in that way. But like I like the afternoon from like 1 to 3 is awful. I need to be doing more administrative, like stuff that doesn't take a lot of brain power. So when you're designing that ideal schedule, you have to pay attention to like your own like body like rhythms. Chris, I know from working with you at Rise that you definitely were like a night owl and would spend like late nights. And I'm like, wow, I am asleep by 10 p.m. My brain does not work that way. So you have to like take that into consideration when you're making that, and know that there's no one right way to do that. It's just what works best for you so that you can make the best of that time.
I think one of the more powerful lessons I learned in running a business was to give up this ideal scenario of the 8 to 5, workday, and realize that I love slow mornings with my family, and reading, doing a little bit of education, having coffee, and then something about my brain wakes up at like 2 or 3 p.m. and I just get my most creative, and I can ride that creative wave sometimes till 7 or 8. I have to plan that and be intentional in the way that I make time for relationships and go home and have dinner and maybe come back to the office on some nights. And I can keep, being creative and until 10 or 11. As I get older, I am also in that group of, I need to go to bed. I cannot in any way imagine doing all-nighters anymore, which is not good. We want
Yeah.
to embrace that psychology of when we're creative, but we also have to be caring for ourselves and getting the rest
Yeah.
that we need. But yeah, I think that was probably the most powerful thing for me, is to realize, when am I my most creative, and put my creative or arduous tasks at that time.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And for me, another like tip, if you're somebody who works with clients, you need to have at least one day where you are not doing any client communication.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
putting those boundaries in place, it's again similar to like just like stuff. Like you need to maybe have only one day in your week where you're doing like consultations, or like probably for you like coaching. Like that's a
Yeah,
completely different brain space, and
yeah,
it's not fair to your clients if you're trying to like fit all the, it just like doesn't work if you're doing like all the different types of work in one day. Like our brains are so confused by that, and it makes
yeah,
you get really tired. It's very exhausting to do that. Also, I feel like my most productive days are sometimes Saturdays, because it feels like, oh, I know it's acceptable for me to like create the space where I'm not communicating with people. And so that's something that I've learned. It's like I kind of like spending 2 hours on a Saturday and 2 hours on a Sunday to do the stuff that is more creative or business development, because it doesn't feel like I'm taking away from other things. So you just have to think about what works best for you. And the other thing that I do on the weekends, which I consider like work and time blocking, is I block in like a review period where I have these questions, which again, you'll get when you download that PDF, to help me review and just be really conscious of like what went well in this last week, what brought me joy, what am I grateful for, what did I overcome, what did I learn, and giving yourself space and time in your week to do those tasks gives you clarity moving into the next week of like, okay, well, maybe I need to shift just a little bit because, well, that thing did not give me joy and it did not move the needle forward. So again, I'm like such a huge proponent of even incorporating things like that are more just like
mm,
reflection time.
that's really good. Be honest about what works and get rid of what doesn't.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
say, we don't need it. We don't need it.
Well, okay, so recognizing that this is a hard time for many people, What are some opportunities that you see for entrepreneurs, business leaders to improve their business processes and systems?
This has been such an interesting question. It's something that I've been talking to a lot of clients about because it is a slower time. And I think it's number one, giving us time to like see like, well, are there ways that we need to diversify or maybe serve our clients a little bit differently? It also gives us space to look at that list of projects that like gets moved. I'm like, oh, I'll do that next week. Oh, I'll do that next week. Well, now we have a little bit more time and we see like, if we're still not doing that thing, is that really a priority? Is it something that we really want to implement? And I, like for me, I'm like, oh, wow, even though I'm staying at my house literally all the time, I still would rather work on like high level projects than like organizing my pantry. Like that's just not a thing for me. So I think for business leaders right now, a great place to start is look through past email communication. I think if there's projects that you've like kind of dreamed about, but you keep putting them off, like do a little bit of reflection around that and see like, okay, well then just move it off the list. There's no shame there. But I think it's a great time to really review what your customer experience looks like. I am such a huge proponent of giving clients like the best customer experience. I want them to feel taken care of. I want them to feel like it's a smooth process, that they know exactly what to expect every step of the way. So I think building email templates right now is like the most golden thing you could do. And now when I'm coming out of this, I'm going to be able to be way more productive. All of these things that I was doing, like repeating the same thing, it's like, no, it's automated. I don't even have to think about it anymore. So I think doing that, looking at some of the past customer experiences, what went well. I like to ask these questions like, okay, what went well? What did we learn? What could we improve from each, like maybe client experience? And then maybe make a list of the gaps that you're seeing and just choose one thing that you want to fix each week. Because like, what is this, like week 7 of quarantine? I don't even know. But like, imagine if you would have done that, you would have 7 small things that you would have accomplished every week. So I'm a big proponent for business leaders right now, just doing the small things that maybe otherwise would get kind of shoved under the rug.
So I hear you saying a lot of reflection and a lot of review in what you have done or what you've thought about even and dreamt of as far as ideas go. And then breaking that off into small bite-sized pieces for the time that we're in quarantine or the time that we're working from home or we're, just in this crisis.
Absolutely. And I think the amazing thing is that whenever we transition back to, I'm not going to say normal, I don't know, whenever that we're in a different frame, you're going to have built these habits that are going to actually allow you to be way more productive. Because I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I have a little bit of opposite anxiety thinking about, wow, I'm going to have more things pulling on my time. And I've become so accustomed to this like slower pace that I'm kind of worried about, well, will I be able to keep up with these things that have made me feel so like grounded and made me feel productive? So I think establishing them as habits now will make the transition a lot easier and just give you a lot of clarity of like what is a priority and what's not a priority.
And that's really what you're telling us is great about time blocking is we build a structure. Now we get good at utilizing it, and it will flex with us as we shift into different phases of the world to come.
Absolutely. It's just a tool that you will always have access to, and it can shift according to whatever your life looks like at that time. So it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. It's just like, you know what? It's a tool that I have, and now I know how to use time blocking as a skill. So let's do it, world.
That's awesome. Mary, thank you so much for your time and for giving us a free resource and being there to advocate for small business owners. I'm really grateful for you.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, Chris.
You bet. Guys, thank you for watching the Small Business Survival Guide. We're linking down below to Mary's social, her website, and the email list that you should join for that free PDF all about time blocking and productivity. We'll also give some links to my 30 days of marketing ideas for social. You can join my list as well and receive that PDF freebie. It's all the day for PDF freebies, right? We are about it. Subscribe to the Small Business Survival Guide, and we will see you next time.